Wow, it's been quite a conference already, hasn't it? It's all right. We are in the bar after here. But, like many of you, I travel a lot. And I'm not always quite so lucky to stay in somewhere as luxurious as this. I'm reminded, in fact, about 3 or 4 years ago now, I was working on behalf of a UK-based retailer. And I was one of 7, 8 training associates. And we were embarking on a 3-week, back-to-back national training roadshow. But not just any training roadshow, because we were delivering, each and every day, we were delivering customer service. So we really had to be top of our game, full of energy every single day. And we started in Edinburgh, up in Scotland, and we would train throughout the course of the day, and then what we would do is we would jump on a plane or on a train or in a taxi, and we would move on to the next location in the evening before staying in our overnight hotel and doing the whole thing again, full of energy, all the next day. And this was going on back to back to back over the course of 3 weeks. And we went from Edinburgh, we flew over to Belfast in Northern Ireland, and then we flew back again to Newcastle in England. And we meandered our way back and forth down the UK. And I remember we were about now a week and a half in. And you can only imagine. We'd been full of energy each and every day. But actually, our personal energy was diminishing. So we would be exhausted at the end of each day, heading off to our transport for that evening, and off we'd go to the next location. And I remember we'd been in Cardiff, so Cardiff in Wales, and that evening we had to travel after the training day all the way across England to a little place that you might have heard of called Welwyn Garden City. It's around about 2.5 hours, or at least it should be. But this evening, we didn't have a plane, and we didn't have a train. We didn't even have a taxi. We had a minibus. And not just any old minibus, but a really old minibus. Probably shouldn't have been on the road. And actually, the driver that we had that evening was probably the only driver in the UK at that very moment that did not have a satellite navigation system. But he assured us that he would find his way by nose. To make matters worse, it was raining. It was already getting dark. And so at the end of the day, I got a bag. And I got my little wheelie case, my little trolley case. I was playing dodge the puddles in the car park to the minibus. And then me and 7 other training consultants squeezed ourselves into this minibus. It was cold, and we were tired. And true to form, our driver took us on several wrong turns, down dead ends, wrong directions, until eventually we hit the motorway, just in time for rush hour. And if you've heard of rush hour, I'm sure you have, that is the time of day when almost all commuters in the country are driving. And it was raining, remember. Who's from the UK? Okay, then you'll know that when it rains in the UK, just a little bit, everything slows down. So we'd hit the motorway in rush hour. It was raining, it was going dark, and we were bumper to bumper to bumper. The journey that should have taken 2.5 hours eventually took nearly 4, because also, I have to point out, I'm a lady of a certain age, so I can't do a long journey without a bathroom stop. So we'd asked our driver to pull over at the services, which we did. We played dodge the puddles again and went in and took our bathroom break. Grabbed a couple of snacks as well, because we were starting to get hungry. You know how it is. And eventually, we arrived nearly 4 hours later at our luxury accommodation for the evening, the Premier Inn. Now, if you've heard of the Premier Inn, then you'll know that it is a UK, predominantly based hotel chain, a budget hotel chain by its own admission. But you know, there's something about a Premier Inn, and this is, in fact, the reception at Welwyn Garden City. There's something about a Premier Inn. You kind of always know what you're going to get. The familiar purple decoration and the logo. What they call their good night guarantee. So, comfy beds. And it's clean and tidy. And you know, almost always at a Premier Inn, they have a bar or a restaurant attached for the convenience of its guests, which is great. Doesn't matter where you stay, and I've stayed at many. And so, cold, tired, hungry, and bedraggled, for the final time, I grabbed my bag and my trolley, and I played dodge the puddle. And as you'd expect, I missed at that point, so I found myself going into reception, shaking my foot. And behind this counter, there was a lady. You know, I never got her name, and I always wished I had. She was probably mid-50s. She had lovely blonde hair and the most warm, welcoming smile as she said to us, "Good evening, and welcome to the Premier Inn at Welwyn Garden City." And those 3.5 hours of hell that we had just endured just diminished in that very moment, as we found ourselves all breathing this sigh of relief. We had arrived. But we were hungry, so we checked in quickly, and as you do when you're on the road, we said, 10 minutes, see you in the bar. And off we did, dispersed to our different rooms. And you know, it doesn't really matter whether you're at a budget hotel or a more luxurious one. You'll be familiar with the old Wi-Fi signal. Doesn't always work, does it? And in that 10 minutes of free time I had to make a couple of calls home. So I decided to go from my room back through to this reception area, where this time it was empty but for this same smiling blonde lady. I don't know why, but I decided to stop before I made the call, and I said to her, "Thank you." And she looked at me a little bit puzzled. I said, you know, we just had this most horrendous journey getting here, and I regaled the whole 3.5 hours plus. And I said, and you're welcome. Your smile just took everything away just there in that moment. And she said to me, words I've never forgotten and words I've often repeated at conferences like this. She said, you know, the way I see it, I have to come to work, so I might as well choose to be happy. And a nice story. And I've often wondered, you know, what was it about her? Is it that she's just a special kind of person? Why is it that all our employees don't choose to always be happy in their work? And I looked up what the Premier Inn was all about. Because, of course, like your businesses, we have purpose and vision and mission. But I wanted to look at their values. I wanted to see how they wanted to bring their mission and their vision to life. And I saw a number of things on their website, things that I realized actually were apparent in each and every Premier Inn I'd ever been to. They say that they embrace applications from anybody, regardless of social standing and regardless of ability. Not only are they encouraged to apply to the Premier Inn, but they will invest in them. They will train and develop them to ensure that every member in the Premier Inn has the ability to be the very best version of themselves. It was apparent in that lady that day. They talk about their charitable side. In fact, you can perhaps see on the side of these slides a basket. It's a charity basket. It contains sweets or candy if you're from the US. And you would insert a donation for a children's hospital in the UK in exchange for these sweets. And this was really, again, very visible around the Premier Inn. And the third thing was that they pride themselves on delivering excellent service. I should have known that from the service I received that day. And these core values were overridden, if you like, by three small words. These small words: force for good. That's what they wanted to be. It's how they wanted to be perceived internally with their stakeholder network and externally in each and every action and transaction. How many of you in this room, just give me a quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with your organizational values? Not just why you do what you do, but how you want to bring to life your vision and your mission. Give me a show of hands. A few of you. It's a good start. Great. So now answer me this question. How many of you know how your organization wants its values brought to life? Few fewer, but still a few hands. And then finally, one more question. I wonder how many people in this room can 100%, hand on their hearts, say to me that they believe that each and every person who works within their organization understands what the organizational values are and how you want them brought to life. A couple. Great. I wonder what more you could be doing in order to find ladies like the one I saw at the Premier Inn that day. It's just a start. I wonder what you would like your values to be. We've heard Tim talking about some of these 5 pillars, but how do you want to bring your vision and your mission to life? Perhaps through things like creativity. Perhaps you want your people to innovate. Or, as Tim suggested, collaborate. That's not for me to say. But I hope it gives you some food for thought of where to start in terms of your values. So point 1 from me today is to really make those visible. Visible around your workplaces. Maybe, a start would be on posters on walls, but that really is the start. Values should be internalized by everyone in your business and exhibited both internally and to your external stakeholder network. Some of you in the room may recognize this aircraft. Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines are quoted so frequently as an organization that just does things differently. In fact, if you Google Southwest Airlines, you'll find many YouTube clips of how cabin crew have sung in flight to their guests and how they've really gone over and above to entertain and provide great service. And I've often wondered, why is it that Southwest Airlines gets quoted so frequently? So I looked them up. I wanted to see what were their values. Did they look at collaboration? Did they look at creativity? And in part, I was right. But actually, Southwest Airlines also do things differently. And they had some really off-the-wall values, like warrior spirit. They wanted their people to have a warrior spirit and a servant's heart. And they also prided themselves on having a fun, loving attitude. In fact, so much so, they spelt loving, L-U-V-I-N-G, just to make the point. And I noticed a great story about Southwest Airlines that I wanted to share with you. And it's all about the CEO, or one of the CEOs, Herb Kelleher. See, Southwest Airlines have been operational now since the late 60s and into early 70s. They rebranded in the early 70s. And they have literally gone from strength to strength to strength in terms of service, excellence, and profit. And this story that I saw was all about this slogan, just plain smart. I don't know if anybody has heard this story, but in the 90s, Southwest Airlines were looking at different slogans, slightly, well, mildly amusing slogans to use for their airline, and this was one that they chose. But this one posed a problem, because they were approached by a rival airline, Stevens Aviation, who said, we've actually trademarked that slogan, plain smart, so you can't use it. Now, you might think, you know, this is the US in the 90s, so perhaps a very costly, time-consuming lawsuit would follow. But this was Southwest Airlines, and they do things differently. So instead of the lawsuit, Herb Kelleher decided to approach the CEO, Kurt Howald, of Stevens Aviation, and he challenged him to an arm wrestling competition. This is a true story. And this arm wrestling competition was going to decide on who could use the slogan. Now, Kurt Howald thought, well, you know, if I'm 20 years younger than this guy, you know, it's going to be all right. So it went ahead. And it's actually, again, you can YouTube this. It's called Malice in Dallas. So what they did is they hired out this huge wrestling arena. They publicized it. Both companies publicized the event. And the deal was this. They would have 3 rounds of arm wrestling competition. The person who lost each round had to donate $5,000 to a charity of his choice. And the overall winner of the tournament got to keep the use of the slogan, just plain smart. So what do you think happened? Who won? Stevens Aviation, Kurt Howald won. The younger man won. But what happened next? This is the incredible part of this story, is immediately the contest was won. Kurt Howald granted Herb Kelleher and Southwest Airlines permission to use the slogan, just plain smart. So not only, when something you would assume would create controversy, not only did both organizations get huge publicity. We've heard today about business for good being good for business. So they both got huge publicity. But also they raised $15,000 for charity, and both companies got to use the slogan. Now, just to be really clear, I'm not suggesting that you challenge your competitors to arm wrestling competitions in order to solve problems moving forward. But I wonder what your actions could say to the world. Because Southwest Airlines, just by doing things differently, got things solved without compromising what they actually wanted. And they've continued to go from strength to strength to strength. In fact, many consider them the world's most successful domestic airline. So what actions can you put in place for your organization? It's obviously not just about actions that bring your organizational values to life, of course. There are other ways in which you can use them. So I I've had connections to the recruitment industry now for over 2 decades, and I work with many organizations, helping them interview, attract, and recruit people into their business, as well as engage and retain them. And we know that in many places around the world right now, the fight for talent, skilled talent, is really on. And I look at the way organizations try to attract people into their business. And I think about where often they're going wrong. I see advert after advert after advert on my social media that starts with straplines such as, "We have an exciting opportunity for," ... or "We are currently recruiting for." And they all look the same. So I wonder if maybe this is the first thing that we can change. Small changes that bring our values to life in the written word. Imagine this. Imagine if you're a business that prides itself on creativity. Let's say creativity is one of your organizational values. Imagine then starting your advertising with, if you're the sort of person that wants to be creative every day, then we have an opportunity for you. Now you might be thinking, in this fight for skilled talent, well, maybe that's not going to attract many people. Maybe if I have something more generic, I'll get too many people apply. But you see, by bringing your organizational values into your written word when you advertise, you're not just speaking to the many or the few, you're speaking to the right people. Because surely that's what you want in your business, is people who believe what your business believes, people whose personal values align and complement your organizational values. That's truly what organizational fit means, isn't it? And then you have a short list. You may just have a few. And you invite them to the interview stage. I also speak to many organizations about how they interview. And not all of them have a robust interview process. Some, but not all. So often what happens is the individual will come to the interview. The CV or the resume is dissected, and you go through what people do day to day, the responsibilities, the projects that they've been associated with. And then the interviewer and interviewee have a chat, and they decide if they like each other. I wonder if that's how it goes in your business. I don't know. But you see, what happens with that is often we end up with homogeneous teams of people that they almost look like each other. They're the same kind of people. Now, there are some businesses that use something you may be familiar with. It's called competency-based interviewing. Anybody heard of that? Few people heard of that. So competency-based interviewing is really clever because at the outset, what you'll do is you'll decide upon the competencies that are required for the role. So that won't be the skills or the qualifications or the relevant experience. And you'll create questions ready to ask your candidates based on those competencies. And the good thing about that is you're not asking hypothetical questions. What would you do if you had a problem to solve? Because when you do that, you'll often receive a hypothetical response. But competency-based questions, they lead you to gain evidence of what somebody can do. So if the competency was indeed problem-solving, I might ask a competency-based interview question such as, give me an example of a time when you've had to solve a problem. What would you do? Or what did you do? And what was the result? And this, of course, gives you that evidence. Can the person really do what they claim they can? But there are few organizations that ask value-based interview questions. Some do, and they're finding it really useful when attracting organizational fit. Because let's remember, if you've brought your values to life in your written word, in your advertising, and you have spoken to those people whose personal values align with your organizational values, you surely want to be able to test that theory further at interview stage. So let's take creativity again, just to keep it uniform. The value-based interview question takes the same format as the competency question. Give me an example of a time when you've had to be creative in your work. What did you do? And what was the result? So now you're not just gleaning evidence about skills and qualifications and things that perhaps you might have decided you're prepared to train and develop in those people. But now you're really getting to the heart of people. Do they believe, and can they demonstrate those beliefs in the workplace? So point 3 is think about the language that you use in the written word for advertising and in the spoken word, amongst other examples, which I'll go on to in your interviewing. I've already talked about some of the benefits to using your values in your business, and one of which being promoting a culture of diversity. Diversity and inclusion is quite high on the corporate agenda at the moment. And the good thing about diverse teams is it's well documented that you will get increased productivity. Forbes, Harvard, they all tell us the same story. Diverse teams increase productivity. But how does that work? Well, first of all, brains that come from different parts of society, and I don't just mean gender or age or nationality, but I mean those with neurological diversity as well, people that think differently to one another. They will be naturally much more creative than homogeneous teams. Cloverpop, the US decision-making organization, ran a survey on organizations promoting diversity and inclusion. And they suggest that diverse teams will make decisions, effective, correct, well thought through decisions, 87% faster than homogeneous teams. Oh, and with half the meetings. Is there anybody in the room that thinks they would benefit from having fewer meetings? Yeah, certainly a lady at the front. Okay. So there are added benefits. Yes, you'll still get conflict. In fact, conflict might increase a little. But diverse teams will work through that conflict to a successful, productive, effective outcome. And as we know, productivity usually equals profit. And it's still the case that many organizations, probably in your field as much as every other, are quite homogeneous. So by using your values to promote diversity, you will not only increase productivity, but you'll have an offering that's truly unique. Unique for the people within your organization, as well as your stakeholder and customer base outside, who, by the way, are probably all equally diverse. So that's attracting people into your business and recruiting people into your business. But now you've got to keep people in your business and keep them being productive, right? The Society of Human Resource Management tells us that 90% of organizations that introduced a value-based recognition program said it impacted engagement. So engagement's not just people that come to work every day, but they are people who not only want to come to work every day, but they want to do a good job. They are, if you like, internally bought in to your organization and what you stand for. And you do some great work. So you want people within your organizations that believe in that and will exhibit that in their day-to-day work. Furthermore, they said 68% of companies that introduced a value-based recognition program, they said it impacted retention. So not only will you have engaged workers, but most of them will also stay with you. I wonder if that would be useful for people. I don't know what your staff turnover figures are like, but this could be something of value. So value-based recognition program, just to be clear, can be as simple as when somebody in your organization demonstrates one of your values, somebody else notices. They acknowledge. Perhaps they reward or incentivize. It can be part of a big strategic compensation and benefits package. Or it can be as simple as just somebody noticing when something good has happened. I believe it was Lisa Marie Searle who, she talks about noble purpose, not noble foods, but noble purpose. And she gave some quite concerning statistics about US employees, saying as many as 51% of employees in the US were disengaged at work. She tells people in audiences to look at the person next to them. She says, chances are one of you hates your job. Now, she makes it amusing, but it's really not funny. So I would imagine that you would want people in your business that are not only committed to being there, but do a good job representing your business and everything it stands for whilst they are. So values absolutely impact engagement. And we've talked about people that recruit. We've talked about people like front of house. We've talked about employees in general. But there's one person in the audience, if you like, that we've failed to look at yet. Some of you I know will have flown here. Maybe not with Southwest Airlines, but you'll have flown here to this conference. So you'll remember this from the safety demonstrations where the cabin crew tell you, in the event that oxygen fails, masks like these will fall down from the compartments above. And the words that follow, I think, epitomize leadership. They say, fit your own mask first before attempting to help others. Because the final piece of this values puzzle to support corporate sustainability in your business is you. We copy what we see every day in behaviors and in language. You cannot simply tell your people to demonstrate creativity and yourself be closed to new ideas. You cannot tell your people to promote a culture of honesty and integrity, and you yourself are not in your actions or your language. It is the final piece of the puzzle. And I take you back to Herb Kelleher at Southwest Airlines, who demonstrated himself that fun-loving attitude in the Malice in Dallas. So, forms a little acronym as a reminder. To really enhance sustainability in your business, your values need to be visible in everything you do, in your actions and in your language, which will give you something unique to support engagement with self at the heart. I thought I'd finish with a little personal story. It's nearly time. I thought I'd finish with a personal story. So I'm the only child of two parents. When we were growing up, we didn't have a lot. But you know, my dad, he did and still does have this huge personal value that family time is so important. And whenever I was out of school or they were not working, we used to really play games, and occasionally we'd go on short breaks because we couldn't afford kind of big glamorous holidays back then. But in the late 70s, what we did is we went camping. So we bought a tent. And it wasn't just any tent, it was a trailer tent. Anybody heard of a trailer tent? Okay, yeah, some people. Okay, they look a bit like this. This was a luxury one. So trailer tent, they were so clever because what you would do is literally you'd have the trailer which you'd attach to the back of your vehicle, and the tent itself actually kind of concertinaed out of that trailer. It was really simple to erect, and then at the end of your break, you just kind of fold that back in. Well, that's a luxury one, but as I said, we didn't have a lot of money. This is more like ours. It was kind of falling apart a little bit. It was second-hand. We couldn't afford a new one, and had a couple of holes in it, but it did the job. And what we would do, because I'm from the middle of England, which I don't get to see the sea very often, so it's quite a novelty being here, but we are on the doorstep of some beautiful countryside. And so what we would do on a Friday evening, once I'd finished school and they'd finished work, is we'd attach the trailer tent to the back of the car, and off we would head off to a different campsite somewhere in the country. Family time was really important. And I remember this one Friday night, and we were heading off to a new campsite to try. My dad was driving. My mum had the map. Now, that was a flawed strategy, by the way, because my mum would tell you she can't find the way to the bottom of our garden. So it was a really bad idea. So values alone, by the way, they're not the only thing to support your business. They need to be combined with a strong strategy, which I'm sure you all do have, and solid goals. So Mum had the map, flawed strategy. I'm in the back. Are we nearly there yet? Are we nearly there yet? I was about 9. And we were driving, and Mum got us lost. So we thought we were nearly there. We were nearly there. And Mum said, look, I just can't work this thing out. I'm saying, are we nearly there yet? So you'd think that what my dad would do is what most normal people would do, and that is stop, take the map, find the way, and drive us on. Not my dad. In fact, he was about to, but just ahead, he saw a car towing a caravan. He said, there we go, nearly there. We'll follow that. And that's what we did. So we followed the caravan. And we followed it. And we followed it. Mum's still trying to work out the map. I'm still going in the back. Are we nearly there? Yeah, are we nearly there? Yeah, we're nearly there. And we followed this caravan, and we followed it. And we ended up on some main roads. And then if you're in the countryside, you know, the roads get more narrow. on some side roads. And eventually, probably about 45 minutes later, the realization hit my father as the caravan turned a corner, and we followed, and we saw what happened next. See, the caravan wasn't going camping. The caravan was going home. So we followed that caravan all the way down their street and watched them pull on their drive. My dad suddenly realized, okay, strategy was flawed. Imagine his embarrassment as he had to continue, and it was a cul-de-sac. So he then had to maneuver this trailer 180 degrees. If you've ever tried moving one, it's a killer to maneuver. And drive back out, sparing his blushes. So I guess really where that takes us, that little story, takes us to the point of, well, you know, we did get our family time. And as my dad says, family time is important. But you need the good strategy too. Because when values are at the heart of everything you do, your personal values and your business values, this is from the Dalai Lama, by the way, which I love it. Be happy to change your goals or your strategies, but never ever change your values. Because value-based culture, it's the key to corporate sustainability. I've been Jackie Handy. Thank you very much.